All right, is it working? It should be working. Let's grab the link here, wherever it might be. Let's see. At everyone. Oops. That's not right. There we go. Perfect. Let's see here. Chat. Let's see if, and there's PenCap. I finally got to see the message. Always you. You're the first one to say hi. I'm actually kind of impressed. That level of conscientiousness. Let's see. It's another Friday stream talking about the good old MBTI. Most people think it's pseudoscience, and those are the same people that don't understand the system whatsoever. So, and yet they tell me it's not, it's pseudoscience. Love it. Hello, lines and a heart for a name. I can't ever seem to remember what your name is. How's it going? Today we're backtracking and doing a bunch of master quests in Monster Hunter Rise that I never bothered doing before. Let's see. Oh, it's already getting hot in here. Awful. I think it was weak to ice, wasn't it? A great route. It doesn't really matter. They have such low HP. Oh, cookie dough. That's right. I remember now. I like cookie dough. How's life, cookie dough? Everything's going well. Does anyone have any beginning questions about MBTI that we can start off with? I think we were supposed to be talking about INTPs or something today. It was mentioned a number of times, but I'm not certain that that's what is supposed to be talked about today. I'm just here to keep talking because some people find it entertaining. Aww. Take that, monster. Life is a weird thing. That's fair.
Are you able to heal up? Such a skate.
Be careful!
Be careful.
The monster is down.
Ugh, missed.
Oh, you're gonna love this one.
Goodbye!
Something big is coming. Let's keep riding.
Got him.
Target.
Let's see. Today, well, let's talk a little bit about INTPs while we're waiting for people to funnel in and ask some questions. INTP is one of the 16 personality types in the Myers-Briggs type indicator system, and they have a preference, a stronger preference for these four functions. Introverted thinking, extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, and extroverted feeling. That extroverted feeling is usually the one that causes them problems, by the way. As we know, INTPs have extroverted feeling in the fourth position, which is, as I call it, the disdained function position. So they are aware that it's important. They are aware that it's something that they pay attention to from time to time, but they'd rather not be focusing on it. They'd rather focus on, well, in their case, they'd rather be focusing on introverted thinking. They'd rather trust their own personal understanding and logic to that of social quandaries. It is a pretty decent way to put it, I suppose. How many INTPs have you typed so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4? Oh, wait, are we talking about like in life in general, or just when I started doing the typings on the Discord? Because when typings in the Discord, like 1, 2, 3, 3? 3 roughly. I was thinking back to other people. Those other INTPs I don't really talk to very often. But usually busy doing their own things. I can't even get my friend of 20 years to talk to me on a semi-consistent basis. Now, granted, that's probably because he's got a family now. He has a ISFP wife and a virtual newborn here. Like, he's like virtually a newborn. He's like 9 months old or something now, or something like that. I haven't been paying that much attention. So, and boy, I imagine that child's going to be just as weird as he is. I would think. Possibly, probably. Oh boy, these kill quests are pretty annoying. Let's see. How do we identify an INTP in real life? So oftentimes especially when they're young, they are very awkward in conversation with other human beings. I've seen them try to be, in quote, cool, to try and be sociable, and it comes off as weird. Like they say things inappropriately. That happens a lot. Or they sometimes try to be edgy and say quotable lines. Like, sometimes when you stare into the abyss, it sometimes stares back, at random, loudly in a restaurant for whatever reason. Some of them have gotten enjoyment out of the idea of being something of a spectacle in life. And so, for example, I know one INTP who loves to embarrass me anytime I ever go out with him in public, and we'll be going through the Safeway and he'll be wearing a kilt. Underwear optional. And then, calf-high socks and Argyle socks. Just to seem embarrassing, because that's the best kind of attention that they can get sometimes, is by being weird. And so, there's that. The males tend to act quite spurgy, is how I generally describe it, as being a little bit on the spurgy side. So, not always great. Other than that, though, they're generally highly intelligent creatures. They spend most of their time trying to have a personal understanding of situations on on whatever they view as objective kind of levels. Their imagination often takes them to learning a great number of impractical bits of knowledge, information. Big on that. That's how they like to spend their time, is acquiring more information. INTP women. You don't meet too many of them. But they are probably not as awkward, I would say. Not as awkward as INTP males, because even though you can be super awkward as a female, and you're still going to have male attention. You'll still have men that are willing to simp for you and do things for you, even if you're acting particularly awkward. And in fact, I would imagine that INTP females get a different kind of attention given that they're typically going to be a bit more logical, to say the least, than other personality types that women are more common as being. And so they may end up getting different attention from different kinds of men. But point is they'll always get attention, which means that they're always getting practice at being sociable. So, I mean, they're still going to be a little bit awkward, obviously. They're not going to want to take the initiative in conversation, that kind of a thing. More often than not, especially with strangers. Hello, person with what appears to be Russian letters for a name. How's it going? As for going back to INTPs, that's typically how you notice them, is that they're weird, awkward, often shy. In the earlier years, they get better as they get older, obviously. My friend of 20 years is way better about not being awkward in conversation. However, he's still pretty awkward, and he still has issues talking to people in public. He has what he calls designated extroverts, and so he does his best to, when he's going someplace, he'll take a designated extrovert with him, make sure that he takes one with him so that they can do all the talking to people, so that he doesn't have to. Just gets uncomfortable. Oh, that's Wild Man then. Wild Man. I was just talking to Wild Man a few minutes back. Not today, Satan. Uh-oh. Oh. Lucked out. Did that too early. I have to go in for now. Bye. Okay, bye, Cookie Dough. It was nice that you asked a question before leaving. So let's see here. No more questions there. Let's keep talking about the INTP. INTPs prefer to engage their mind in things that don't exist in reality. They would rather come up with ideas for things. They would rather study black holes and quantum mechanics, astrophysics, things that mostly exist as theoreticals. And they do their best to deduce answers based on the evidence that they are given. Are Harley or Ven going to join the stream? Well, Harley was supposed to be joining me today, but she was busy. So I told her, though, that if she can join the stream, she can, just find the Discord. Or I invited her to this Discord so that she could join whenever she's ready, assuming that she will be ready. Not sure how long this stream will last. Hello, Mystic Ench. Is that like short for enchanter, enchantress? Something like that. You're unawake? Yeah, I often find myself believing that I'm probably not awake. I'm actually still asleep, and all of this is just some massive hallucination. And what a lame hallucination it is. I'm not like rich or anything. Which reminds me, if there was an episode, a few episodes in the TV show House, where he was hallucinating his best friend's dead girlfriend, and she acted as kind of a gateway to his subconscious, and he was able to get answers out of the hallucination from his subconscious about things. I'm like, how awesome that would be. At least for a while. I would assume that eventually the hallucination would be keeping you awake at night. I would think.
return.
So, could be good, could be bad. Let's see here.
I have faith that
INTPs, though, if you're looking for an INTP, you can find them in all kinds of niche places. I know INTPs that enjoy anime. A lot of them enjoy certain kinds of games that are more single player, though. They don't often play MMOs or more cooperative setting games, although I try to convince them to, but they're just not as interested. They would rather be learning a new skill or getting some new information. What kind of dreams do you get often? Not good ones. My dreams are not pleasant, so just leave it at that. I don't like sleeping because of the dreams. Are INTPs rarer than ENTPs? Last time I looked, as per official data sources, which are about as trustworthy as you can imagine they would be, they're roughly the same. There was a 0.1% difference in that ENTPs were 0.1% less common than INTPs, but you know, take it with a grain of salt. I've met more INTPs than ENTPs, if that helps, over the past 10 years. So there's that. But, you know, it really depends on where you're at. Right? If we're talking, you know, like the average people, like you're walking down the street or you're shopping in a supermarket, you know, you're less likely to, especially nowadays with things like Instacart available, where you know, INTPs can just get their food delivered to them. You know, you're far less likely to find some personality types in a supermarket these days. So it really depends on where you're going. Now, you know, you might find them in anime conventions. As I said previously, you could find them at tech expos. You know, maybe Star Trek conventions. You could probably find some there for sure, I would think. But it's all, yeah, it's all relevant to where you're talking about in terms of like how often you're likely to see them. For example, in your everyday workings, everyday life, you're probably not likely to find an introverted intuitive. And not just because they're, you know, much more rare than the other personality types, but because where they hang out, they're at work, and usually their work is high-end career stuff. Maybe you'll catch them if you're, you know, if you're particularly lucky. You know, you might find them in high school, you know, or you know, school in general, because that's where they tend to be at, and that's where a lot of, you know, a lot of different personality types, you know, come together, is in school, obviously. So there's that. But after school, where are you likely to find them? Well, they're your, you know, a lot of them are going to be politicians. A lot of them are going to be high-end law enforcement agencies like the FBI, CIA, NSA, places like that. They're going to be CEOs. They'll be at board meetings. They don't have time to just, you know, talk to us peasants. You know, a lot of them don't have time for that. So, oh, screwed that one up. Imagine an absolute nerd. That's the answer. An absolute nerd. Yeah, I'd say they're pretty nerdy for certain. I haven't met any confirmed ENTP or INTPs. Well, that makes sense. If you, assuming that you're no longer in school, then that probably would have been the best place to find them before they wandered off and did their own thing. Always looking for something new, those ENTPs. Oftentimes at their detriment. Let's see, do you think a lot of INTP might be studying computer science? Sure. Makes sense to me. It's not necessarily for its subject matter, but it could be because it can oftentimes be a solo kind of job where you're mostly working alone, and you're working with the numbers, and you're trying to come up with your own creative ways of uh, doing the computer science or engineering. It's the future, really. Let's see, I am getting messaged. I'm sure everyone could hear that. Let's find out. Hmm. Hmm. Have to read that later. Anyway, INTPs, they are oftentimes the inventors. They are oftentimes the people that are able to implement new forms of technology. And although most certainly, yes, I'm sure we're all thinking, well, isn't that supposed to be the ENTPs? And absolutely, an ENTP can do those things. Their imagination's a little bit on the wilder side, than an INTP. But it also requires that the ENTP actually, put in the effort required to be in a position to hand their ideas off to people. That requires effort. And so, and it's not like we're currently in a time in society where we've got, where we don't have enough geniuses. I mean, seemingly we do. We have enough people like that. And so they're not going to clamor to get you into those positions, so that you can better society. They've got plenty of people for that. And yeah, they could always use more, I'm sure, but that costs money. And there's got to be some diminishing returns there at some point. So yeah. INTPs are a bit more conscientious than an ENTP, so they tend to get into those positions.
I'll send you to Kingdom Come.
It's all about reality versus theory. Let's see. This might sound wild, but I have met 3 confirmed INTJs. In my point of view, it looks like INTPs are rarer now. Well, it's all about circumstance, really. I mean, you could have just been in a position to have met INTJs versus INTPs. Uh-oh. Hello, Kiwi. At least I think that's Kiwi. Pretty sure that's Kiwi.
I'll send you to Kingdom Come.
Let's see. All in school and uni, that is. Well, that is where you'll find them. More likely to find them, anyways. Because after school, when they're off doing their own careers and whatnot, they don't have time for that more often than not. Let's see here.
Exactly what are we doing?
Having this game on in the background reminds me of these shorts where there's Subway Surf in the bottom of the video. What? I'm not familiar. Good for people with low attention spam. Yeah, attention spam. Goodness, it is warm.
An unforgettable time.
Does everyone like my messy background here? Anyway, talking about INTPs. INTPs, until further notice, anyways. What were we talking about? INTPs, where you can find them, what to look for. They're just very awkward. They of course, this is how I normally perceive someone's cognitive function preference, is how often they choose to reference a personal opinion versus their own personal understanding of something, and then explaining and articulating it. And so in the case of INTPs, when they want to talk logic, well, they're going to articulate why it is they think something is the way that it is. And they do that a lot, and they can't really turn it off. It's something they have a much more difficult time controlling. Much like ISTPs. ISTPs are roughly the same. They would rather talk about their personal understanding of the particular subject. And so that's how I normally perceive anyone's cognitive function preferences during casual conversation. How does one determine if the leading function is extroverted intuition as opposed to having ADHD? Well, it's been in my research and study that people with a lead preference for extroverted intuition have ADHD. Same goes for those that have extroverted sensing in the lead position. Tend to also have ADHD. So there's that. So they're oftentimes one and the same. Although I have also noticed that it seems that in preferenced extroverted sensors, that tends to calm down as they get older. Whereas extroverted intuitives, they end up sometimes getting on Ritalin. Which, I still don't recommend, but on the other hand, if it can help you focus so that you can get stuff done, maybe it's not so bad of a trade-off. ADHD often negatively impacts working memory. That's quite plausible. It's plausible. If your mind is always wandering around to other things, are you able to really focus long enough to commit something to memory? Excellent questions. Or at least I thought so. Yes, Ritalin is going to have some side effects, but at the same time, your life may end up getting destroyed because you're unable to focus. And so it's sure the side effects are bad, but so is not having a functional life. That's also pretty bad. So you pick your battles. You determine what's worth it, I suppose. I had a rather unpleasant childhood, so I just decided that I was better off without the Ritalin. Oh my goodness, I don't like these monsters. And I don't know what it is that we end up talking about in these streams, but my goodness, I have been getting limited monetization on the on the last couple of streams. I'm not sure what it is that I bring up that causes that to happen. But, INTPs are awkward, and you can often find them programming. I've known I haven't in recent memory anyway met an INTP that didn't have knowledge in programming, was studying to become a programmer, or currently was programming. My own brother, that's his job. He's a programmer. For a hospital, last I heard. So good for him. Which coincidentally, my other brother also got a job as for network administration at a hospital. So, doing pretty good. Why is introverted intuition always thought of as a future prediction function? Should it not be? Shouldn't? It's hard to, once again, this dumb heart symbol, it just will not go away. Should it not be NE plus, extroverted intuition plus introverted thinking? So there are a lot, I have met a lot of introverted intuitive preferenced people that really do believe that they understand what's going to happen next. And regardless of how many times I pointed out them being wrong or they found out that they were wrong, they still believe that they are experts at predicting the future. They just, I got the impression that because they value investments, and so that when they invest time into coming up with a plan, that they just believe that that's got to be a good plan because they put that much time into it. How could it fail when they've spent a week coming up with a plan? How could it fail? They oftentimes forget that that people exist. And so, and once again, for certain types, like INTJs, for example, introverted thinking is not one of their stronger preferenced functions. And so, because introverted thinking takes time, and losing time means, losing money, losing success, falling behind on plans. So they don't take as much time to think about what the correct answer would be, pattern recognition and paying attention to it. So they can believe that they can accurately predict the future. They can believe whatever they want. It doesn't make it true. So if you do want someone that pays more attention to things like pattern recognition, then yes, you're going to want to talk to an introverted thinker, someone with a stronger preference for it. And then, of course, if you want someone who can more accurately predict the future, then yes, someone who pays attention to the perspectives of other people in abstract topics such as trying to predict the future, and then pattern recognition being introverted thinking. So you're looking for an INTP or an ENTP. They are more likely to do that. However, when it comes to predicting the future regarding people, I have found that INTPs are less than knowledgeable when it comes to people in regards to what they might be doing next. Oftentimes.
Thanks, buddy.
That's all. Doesn't mean they'll be wrong about people. It just means that, they're not as correct. See, are shadow types BS? Yeah, I think in the way that shadow types are often described, it's crap. It's the idea of so in one particular description they talk about how someone can be in a particularly bad frame of mind and all of a sudden they become their shadow functions. I'm like, you know how dumb that sounds? Just, you don't even have to know anything about MBTI to know that that sounds really dumb. That all of a sudden you're like Jekyll and Hyde and you just had a particularly bad day at work and now all of a sudden you're a completely opposite personality type. It's like, that's not reality. When people are stressed out, much like animals, they go to what's familiar for comfort. They don't just decide to preference a bunch of functions that they normally think are a waste of time. They don't do that. So, yeah, shadow functions. Not only is it nonsense, people seem to develop those, in quote, shadow functions at different rates depending on life circumstances, it seems. That's what I had noticed. There's just lots of inconsistency in regards to function use in those latter latter four functions, rather. So... let's see, with the INTJs, the one INFJ I met. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that oftentimes shadow functions are simply showcased in content to pretend like they have some extra information that other people don't know about. It's snake oil, and I know it's snake oil because I am a master at selling snake oil. So I'm aware when someone's trying to BS someone. That's what I do. It's my thing. What did Crowley say in Supernatural? I've been selling sin to saints for centuries. So. Things that INTPs are good at. INTPs are excellent at pattern recognition. It comes, of course, and of course, there's a cost to having such a strong preference for pattern recognition, and that is when things aren't following in a pattern, they, of course, notice it. It's an anomaly, and they tend to point it out. So if someone's just trying to tell a story, if it stops making logical sense, if there is a lack of congruity in thought process, they'll point it out and then try to, destroy the story. So even for entertainment purposes, they sometimes have issues not pointing it out. And so there's a negative to it. They have a much more difficult time enjoying things that may not make sense. Whereas I, for example, am a master of suspension of disbelief, except for when it comes to more, favorited franchises such as Star Wars. That was a shot straight to the soul. Watching, what was it, like The Return of Skywalker? That nearly killed me to watch that. That hurt. Is all. I forgot what monster I was fighting. A Kazoo and a Somnicanth. Both in the same area. Okay. Thunder, thunder, thunder. What about four sides? Four sides of what? I'm not familiar with this four sides thing. Is that some new typology that I'm not familiar with? Let's see, I've heard of OPS, and then there's the 16 personalities that they have their own understanding of the system that I'm sure doesn't work. And then there was one called like Universal Typology Theory or something like that that I was invited to one time. I wasn't particularly interested, but I remember that being a thing. I'm not certain about this four sides business though. And I'm sure it's a charming theory, and I would absolutely give it credit so long as it worked. a lot of these theories that third party people come up with, they're just theories that don't get tested and are chock full of inconsistency. So I assume that, much like all the other ones, I would put very little stock in its effectiveness. MBTI, four sides of the mind, is it also BS? I'm just going to go ahead and assume. Being somewhat of a more skeptical human being about certain topics, I would say that I would at least study it with a jaundiced eye, as they put it. It's most likely garbage. A lot of people come up with these neat theories. Maybe they're slightly based off of their personal experiences, which is fine. We just, it just needs extensive testing, and as long as you've done the testing, let's say, let's pick an arbitrary number. Let's say that you've been testing it for 10 years, and you've found that it's accurate 99% of the time. We'll be like, okay, it's time to learn more about it. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. See if there's any merit to it. But until that moment, I'm gonna, granted, if I were to read it and it made sense to me, I'd be like, okay, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and try it. That's one thing. But in many cases, like I've said, over the past 10 years, I've listened to a lot of theories that were offshoots of MBTI, and they were straight up trash. Garbage. Which function combination ticks most people off? Most people? Well, okay. So most people are sensors. Approximately 75%, and that number is going up. So 75% of the US population, anyway, is sensor, and most of that is introverted sensing. So what ticks off introverted sensors? Extroverted intuition, especially a heavy reliance on it. That really irritates them. So for most people, extroverted intuition bothers them greatly. So hope that helps. But which combination doesn't necessarily need to be a combination either. It's extroverted intuition upsets people. So if you would like introverted sensors, and then of course a lot of lead preferenced extroverted sensors to like you, you will tone your extroverted intuition down. Tone it down, keep it under control. Have normal, basic, everyday conversations with them, and they'll more often times like you. So, Karen, the Karen type is your stereotypical ESFJ. That's your Karen, typically. Though those are the ones that, you know, their order was a little bit messed up, you know, when they from McDonald's, and they're going to let you know that it was a little bit messed up and how they don't appreciate it being messed up. Understandably. How was that too early? What? This darn game, I tell you. It sounds draining. It most certainly can be. So are extroverted intuitive users forced to develop extroverted sensing? No, no one. Not in the good old U.S. of A. No one is off. No, I mean, not at least on that topic. No one's forced to do that. Yeah, it's not like you could. The best you could do is be on some form of medication, which, you know, someone could make an argument that you are forced to behave in certain ways. Sure, you can make an argument, but realistically speaking, the government's not going to come for you because you want to think outside the box all the time. You know, the government's not going to come after you. Bill collectors might come after you if you are too much, you're spending too much time in your head wondering about the possibilities and the what ifs rather than, I don't know, working and paying bills. So yeah, you know, they may come after you, but outside of that, you're not really forced to do that. And that is why we have societal rejects, because they were not forced, because they can't be forced. And your lead position function is not something that you can turn off. It's permanent. I mean, outside of taking massive brain damage, you're gonna be, you know, you're gonna have that lead function, and you're not gonna be able to just shut it off. You're always going to express it one way or another. You'll let everybody know, one way or another. How does extroverted sensing manifest in ENTPs? Well, I think it'd be more accurate to talk about how it doesn't manifest. So ENTPs having extroverted sensing in the last position means that they are, it's essentially a function that gets ignored. So what does a, you know, typical preference extroverted sensor do in that, in the day, like normally? So they'll take care of, you know, like things like laundry, do the dishes, care more about their physical appearance, obviously. You know, they'll, you know, do those things. They'll also be more aware of their surroundings, because they're not, as a preference extroverted sensor, you're spending less time in here and focusing more on what's going on out here. So you're paying attention to, let's say, my ESTP cousin would have a fit over the state of my desk, or just my living space in general. This is all bad. And so for an extroverted sensor, they pay more attention to what's going on in front of them. So they'll notice that this is disorganized, it's dirty, it's got trash over here. This all needs to go, because there's no reason for it to be here. There's a designated spot for it. There's a trash can outside, you know, dishes go in the kitchen. So it's just getting in the way. Take care of it. So extroverted sensors tend to be more organized, and they, you know, handle the things that need to be handled in reality, in a more real life kind of way. So for an ENTP, it, I guess, manifests as ignoring it more often than not. Now, I'm sure that an ENTP gets older, they can work on it, you know, and be a little bit, have more of a routine for taking care of those things, but depends on the person. So forgetting things is more related to the lack of extroverted sensing, not so, no, that would be introverted. That would be introverted sensing. Forgetting things. So introverted sensing, by definition, is about personal memories. By definition, for Myers-Briggs, from the website, mind you. So for an ENTP, they are aware that doing things in a more traditional manner is something that's done. It's other people tend to do it more often. But when you're spending too much time wondering about the possibilities of the things that are going on around you, or just in far off imaginary lands. You're not spending as much time ruminating on traditions, schedules, routines, and then just general memory. So don't read out loud first, by the way. I will continue to read out loud so that people that aren't paying attention to the chat know what I'm responding to. How does the tertiary function typically manifest or not? The advantaged function. The third position function is what I call the advantaged function. So it's a function that you only want the good things from and none of the negatives. So, for example, an ENTP, my third function would be extroverted feeling. So now, by itself, extroverted feeling is about the harmony in a social setting, socially speaking. It's just in general, being harmonious. So for me, I like using it so that I can get positive attention from people, but I'm not going to do the negative stuff that involves, caring about the the harmony of a social setting. So I'll use it when it can benefit me. But if if you want me to go to your house to take care of you, make sure that you have everything that you need and that you are well, that's someone else's job, not mine. Let's see. I meant, for example, forgetting your phone. Would that not be a lack of extroverted sensing since the phone is a physical object? Remembering your phone would be introverted sensing. But paying attention to your immediate surroundings, that's extroverted sensing. So by definition, extroverted sensing takes in the external stimuli, experiences it, then lets it go. Whereas introverted sensing takes in the experiences and then stores it for future use. Now remember, every person uses every function every day. Just the question is to what degree do they use them? So I always need to make sure I mention that. But yes, forgetting your phone would be, you not flexing your introverted sensing to remember your phone. They're both weak to water? I read that tertiary function is the function that energizes you. What do you think? I think that getting energized by anything depends on your level of interest in doing so, doing whatever that thing is. So, I like to use myself, of course, as an example. I really enjoy spending time with people that I find interesting. But if you put me in a room with people I find uninteresting, I'm going to get very bored and I'm going to get very tired. Start getting sleepy. Now that's kind of strange, right? Because if I'm supposed to enjoy extroverting, then I shouldn't be getting bored by uninteresting people. I should just enjoy the idea that I'm spending time with other people. That's not reality, though. Just the same, I can get very energized by playing a game that I really enjoy. Like on a AAA title that I'm having a lot of fun with, I'll stay up for easily 24 hours just to have fun and play it. But does that make me an introvert? Now, what if I were doing the same thing, except I was playing a game I didn't like? Well, I'm going to start getting bored, and I'm getting uninterested, and then I'm going to start getting sleepy, and I'm going to lose all of my energy. So it really depends on what you're doing as to how you get energy. The idea of blanket getting energy from being extroverted or introverted is straight trash. That's garbage, and it does not fit with reality whatsoever. So you will get energized doing something that you're enjoying, whether it's alone or being around people, interacting with your environment. So let's see. How is introverted thinking and introverted feeling similar? Well, they're similar in that you look inward for an answer to something. That is how they are similar. Introverted feelers typically go with their gut oftentimes when making decisions. Someone that's got a stronger preference for introverted feeling, they tend to go with their gut. If it feels right, then that's what they go with. For an introverted thinker, they have to mull it over. They have to try to understand the logic behind the decision being made and decide whether or not it's correct. And they're looking for objective correctness. So they're more, I mean, they're not, I would say that they're more different than they are similar, but I can see where you can make an argument otherwise. Let's see. How does that work for INTPs and introverted sensing? So if they can remember traditions and routines that they believe will help them on a logical level, then they keep it. Or in the case of INTPs specifically, I would say that they tend to remember things that they are interested in. And we're talking random, useless factoids about things that they're interested in. I oftentimes bring up the example that I have my INTP friend of 20 years. He just keeps up to date with the number of nuclear weapons that the United States has at its disposal, as well as pays attention to other world politics, things like that. He's looking for a pattern in how the world is changing. And so those are things that he's interested in, and he can just randomly spout off all kinds of dumb trivia. When we're playing a trivia-related, like, Jackbox game, he wins every single time. I've been so close to beating him, but he gets me. I thought I knew a bunch of random useless information, and really, I don't hold a candle to that. But he does, and that's because that's how he spends a lot of his time. Just advantaged it. Now, in terms of now, mind you, I said the advantaged function. So what's the negative side? Well, the negative side would be being constantly restricted to following a routine and just doing what you're supposed to be doing, following the traditions, doggedly following them. And it's, that would be the disadvantage to having a stronger preference for introverted sensing. And that's not something that he does. So, as an example, let's see, how does inferior introverted intuition manifest? I have seen it manifest in two ways. The most noticeable way was, for some reason, an incredibly inflated sense of superiority and importance. I have now ESTPs, for example, they're a lot better about it. They're more casual about how superior they are. They it's more of a subtle thing. Whereas ESFPs, for example, will straight up tell you they're the best at this, they're the best at that. They don't need accolades, they don't need to prove anything, they just know that they are. They feel that they're the best. And so that's typically how it manifests. Also, when they're, of course, very young, they don't believe that they need to focus on a clear vision or future for themselves. They just take life as it comes, and they'll just improvise their way through it, and everything will be great. Now, mind you, that isn't always how life works, and that's not always the best way to go about doing it. So eventually, they do end up coming up with somewhat of a plan that they start to try and follow. But it happens much later in life. So there is that. That is how that typically manifests. And if we're talking about inferior being the fourth position function, if that's what we're talking about, which I suspect that we were. Let's see. How do you type mentally ill people? Is it even possible? It depends on the illness, I suppose. So, for example, kids with extreme autism, they just follow routines and do the same things over and over again. So oftentimes I always suspected that children have a strong, autistic children have a strong preference for introverted sensing, because that's how they have to live. And we're talking like level 3 autism. We're talking they can't talk to people. They're mostly just flailing a lot. And maybe if you're lucky, you can get them to sit in front of a television to listen to TV shows that they don't understand because they can't speak a language. So that kind of a thing in terms of mental illnesses or what have you. What else we got here? As for, let's say, people with borderline personality disorder, I often believe that someone who claims that they have BPD are people that A, desire attention, and B, they want an excuse to behave in particularly bad manners. So I don't suspect that there are actually nearly as many people with bipolar personality disorder than we would otherwise think. I think there are far fewer people that are actually afflicted with such a disorder. Let's see. There was a debate about whether introverted thinking or extroverted thinking users tend to state things confidently as if they are facts. Well, I think both types can go for different reasons. I thought it was TE users who do it more. So that, I think it has more to do with the accompanying perceiving function. So if you're talking to an ESTJ or an ISTJ, they'll be very confident that they are correct because they read it somewhere in some place. And everyone, you know, they'll know whether or not most people believe that this is correct information or not. So there's that. Now, for me, as something more of a philosopher, I always ask questions like, what is real, what is right, what is wrong, and are our perceptions of a particular situation even correct or accurate or based in reality or truth? And so for me, I am as confident as one can be on information regarding reality and the perspectives of other people.
Thanks, buddy.
So when I you know, if I'm not certain, or if I can't prove something is true or the case, I say, well, I believe that based on this reason, and this reason, that this thing is in fact true. And then I'm open to listening to counter arguments, you know, to that subject. So that's what I do. I am generally confident in the things that I say are true because I have spent a great deal of time thinking about it and looking at it from as many angles as I could possibly, you know, reasonably give and come up with an answer. Hello, Joseph. But yes, extroverted thinkers typically are more confident that they are correct, even if they're dead wrong. That's been my experience. Let's see. What about? But at the same time, I've known plenty of ISTPs as of late who believe that their logic is 100% sound. So I've also seen them being very confident in what they believe to be the case. What about introverted intuition for ISTPs and ISFPs? How do they use it? Well, they're usually, typically they use it as having a goal and a vision for life. Now, they're not as dead set on getting it done, especially when they're young, but they always have this clear vision, goal, and idea. Now, as I mentioned before, they tend to be more, in terms of cases of depression, I have found that it happens more often in ISTPs and ISFPs, and usually that comes from having this goal that they've envisioned for themselves, and they haven't put as much work towards it as they could have, obviously. They're more improvisational, being extroverted sensing preferenced. They're a bit more improvisational, and so they just kind of take life as it comes with that clear goal in mind. And when if they don't reach that goal, they tend to get kind of sad about it. And so it manifests in a relatively standard way. It's just they have a clear vision of what they want, but whether or not they're going to put the effort in to get it and do what needs to be done to get it, that's a whole nother thing. Let's see. Why are INTPs looked down upon but not INTJs? I don't look down on INTPs. Not saying any type is better than the other, just a pattern I observed. So I can say that all INTPs aren't as social. They're not as good at being social, and so people tend to look at them a certain way. Sure. INTJs, on the other hand, are always very hardworking and conscientious. And that goes for anyone that has a strong preference for introverted intuition. Very conscientious people, they get up, they go to work, they do their job, and then they're always looking to advance themselves. It's like this idea of perpetual self-improvement. And a lot of people respect that because not a lot of people can do it. And so it's viewed as, it's more respected. So I can see why people might look at INTJs in a better light. Let's see. Can't those who claim BPD want to use it as an excuse and it can be true? Two things can be true at once. Absolutely. I have found that oftentimes the people that claim to have BPD are people that just want an excuse to act irrationally. So, Urchin, do you know of OPS, Objective Personality System? If so, what is your opinion on it? I really didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I'm not. I have heard enough information from people who did study the system and found it to be contradictory in a great many ways. So I decided that it was probably not something that I personally am going to spend a lot of time on. I spend all my time specializing in MBTI. That's my thing. It's what I do. It works on enough of a low resolution scale that it can be applied indiscriminately, and it works. Assuming that you have and it'll work for you, assuming that you've got a true understanding of the system. And that's probably not even the best way I could have put that. Just having enough experience using the system. It'll work for you too. But trying to get into a more high resolution thing, you're going to find a whole bunch of inconsistencies in how the system works. A whole bunch. So. It's something to be wary of. Wary, something. Let's see, it's another water monster. Perfect. What else do we got here? INTJs are just very dedicated and focused individuals, and usually people find that respectable. It's respectable behavior, and I don't disagree. Why does Venn say that introverted thinking users can be more emotional than introverted feeling users? Is it just because introverted feeling users supposedly have a better understanding of their emotions and can control it? That would be the general theory and idea. I don't find introverted thinkers to express their feelings more than introverted feelers. Expressing your feelings is more than just coming out and telling people that you're sad about something or that you're happy and whatnot. Voicing your opinion, for example, even when you tell people, if someone asks you about a particular subject and your first response is, I don't care, you're telling me how you feel about it, and how you feel about it is that you don't care. As an example, that's a very introverted feeling response. And so I find that introverted feelers do express their feelings, their personal feelings and personal opinions on things more often than an introverted thinker does. Some introverted thinkers, and as a matter of fact, as we move further on in society, I would say that introverted thinkers may grow more frustrated with people as things move along. Understandably, people are taking to preferencing introverted feeling rather than introverted thinking, it seems, in these past 50 years, let's say. People spend less time trying to discern something, with their own personal logic, and they would instead rather go with their gut instincts and making decisions based on how it might make them feel. Positive or negative, morals, ethics, principles, etc. And although those things can be very important for a society, how much of it do you actually need to make sure that everything's running smoothly? My guess is not a whole lot. Let's see what we got here. Why are INFJs so rare? Well, I don't even want to phrase it like that. I would ask, why are introverted intuitives so rare? People with introverted intuition in the first or second position, why are they so rare? Because most human beings believe that there is more to life than just going up some ladder, finding what they believe is just objective success that other people can see and be, and desire respect, for doing it. A lot of people think there's more to life than that. A lot of people do. And in my opinion, which I rarely give my opinion on things, I try not to, I would say that there is more to life than becoming the CEO of a company, because that takes a lot of work to become the CEO of a company. There's a lot more to life. There's so many aspects to life that can be enjoyed and understood or practiced, experienced. But for introverted intuitives, success is more important than just random frivolities. So INFJs are rare for the same reason that the other three introverted intuitive types are rare. It's that they have a particular desire to be successful. And that's how they want to live their life. And that's what gives them enjoyment, is being successful. That's why it's rare. Most people want to, like your typical man, for example, they want to go to work, collect a paycheck, come home and relax, maybe watch something on TV, maybe go into their workshop and fiddle around with things, play some video games. And they're perfectly content with that. And if they're lucky, they get to have relations with someone, if they're lucky. But, that's a stereotypical man. That's good enough for them. Are they preferenced introverted intuitives? Absolutely not. But that's because, they're not the, introverted intuitives are not the average. So. Let's see. Can you state what the purpose of the third function is again? Did you say it was the advantage function? Yes, you want to take all the good that can come from that function and leave anything that you would perceive as negative. So, for example, an ISFJ, now that's one step higher on extroverted feeling than I am. They take care of people. They want to make sure, and they're generally not happy about it, but they take care of people. They believe that that's their duty in life, is to make sure that everyone's doing good and everyone's got what they need. And it's a task. It's a full-time job to take care of people, especially a family. If you're taking care of a whole family, that's a whole job. That's 12 plus hours a day of taking care of people. It also means that they have excellent experience in diffusing situations. They have mastered the ways to be pleasant company, to get people to generally find them to be likable and okay to be around. Pleasant company. That's the term I like to use. So I have extroverted feeling in the third position. So I love to be loved. Well, and of course that's a very generic way to put that. I enjoy being perceived as pleasant company. I want people to like me. And so that's what I use it for. I want people to like me, and of course that comes with, just generally manipulating people to get them to like me. Maybe I get them to help me out with certain things, maybe accompany me to the DMV because I don't want to be there, and I just want someone that I know to talk to while I'm waiting, things like that. But when it comes to spending 12 plus hours a day to take care of someone, that's not something I want to do, and something I won't do. I'm not into that. Like that's too much for me. There's way too much negative that comes from that that I perceive as negative. So I'm not going to be that interested, and I simply won't do it. So I want to use extroverted feeling just enough to get the benefits, but I'm not going to be using it so much that I experience the negatives, the detriments. I hope that was a good explanation. Let's see. What MBTI is Paul Allen's card? I have no idea who Paul Allen is or what his card is. Let's see. Based, I agree. What would you type the Love Who YouTube guy, if you've seen him, that is? I've seen, I think, some minutes of his channel on things. He no offense to him at all, but he puts me to sleep. It's his content is just not something I'm as interested in. So I kind of get put to sleep, and I just don't watch his stuff. However, I have found that INFJs can be boring, oftentimes very boring. And so possibly that. However, I wouldn't suspect an INFJ would put any real time into managing a Discord community or doing a YouTube channel, unless they were going to be making a whole lot of money doing so. So my assumption is that he's probably an INFP.
He says he's an ENFP.
Oh, could be an
Hello.
ENFP. That's absolutely possible. Hi, Ven. I didn't think you were going to make it today.
Hi.
And I don't know where Harley is.
Oh,
No
she's
idea.
coming.
Okay. I just told her that she can join in whenever she can, I guess. So he could very well be an ENFP. He seems a little too timid to be an ENFP. In my from my perception of him, he seems very timid, and so I get the impression that he's not as confident in speaking as an ENFP would be. But anything's possible, and I certainly don't know him personally. I just know whatever his persona is on YouTube. So if introverted feeling is unnecessary, wouldn't introverted thinking be as well? I don't think introverted feeling is unnecessary at all. I don't think it's unnecessary. I think that all the functions serve a purpose, most certainly. I enjoy it when people are infatuated with me. I enjoy that. There's a lot of power and control that can come from that. It makes me more comfortable to know that someone is very infatuated with me because I know how to handle that. But that's clearly introverted feeling. Introverted feeling inspires people to do things. Often, sometimes very selfless things. Charity, for example. Feeling good about helping someone. Because some people need help. And you need introverted feeling so that someone can feel good about helping someone else. It's important stuff. Also, if we didn't have introverted feeling, then more often than not, people wouldn't care about their offspring. Even those that don't have a strong preference for introverted feeling can still feel a connection, a love for their children. And so it's important. It's all important. Everything's important. It's all about balance. If you don't need a lot of morals for society to function well, well, no, we actually do need morals for society to function. Someone asked me not too long ago, what would a whole society of ENTJs look like? I'm like, well, it would look like something of a wasteland, a dystopian wasteland, because it's constantly a bunch of people who want to command other people to do stuff. And not one of them wants to follow the orders of the other. And they would constantly be offing, the next person up the chain just so that they could move up in position. You wouldn't have anything. Just the same, you wouldn't have society without morals and values. We wouldn't have those things. I personally, and this is an introverted feeling thing, right? I believe that you shouldn't take things from others that you haven't earned. Stealing, essentially, is bad. Generally speaking, I think it's bad. Just stealing. And that you shouldn't do it. So it's because of a morality like that that allows civilizations to thrive and prosper. You need morals to keep humans in check. It's important. Everything's important. But just the same, thinking before doing something is also important, that I have found. Going with your gut instinct can be helpful from time to time. And it's certainly a lot faster than mulling it over for a week before making a decision. But it's not always going to lead to the correct, or do a decision that you may later regret. It's not always going to lead to something totally positive. So it's a balance. We live in a world that requires balance. Why do I don't think I'm hurting this monster very much. I'm doing much less damage. Let's take a look. Oh, because I'm still using a dragon weapon. Oops. Let's see. Are there certain types that you've noticed being more socially awkward and quiet, or doesn't social awkwardness not correlate with type? I mean, I guess INTPs, but maybe they can't be the only one. For social awkwardness, I have seen ISTPs that were very specific in stature that tend to be on the more awkward side. They have less experience talking to people. I have seen that. ISTJs I have seen to be very awkward in conversation. The ones that, because ISTJs require a great deal of programming, and so if they're not programmed to or conditioned to be more socially experienced, they miss out on it, and they end up catching the Asperger's. So that absolutely happens. So it really depends on how much human contact and experience you have. So, and I mean, granted, there are some types that just can't be both, right? So ESFJs, ENFJs, they're not socially awkward. They literally, they can't be, because their whole preference in life is to bother people and to be around them at all times. So they're not going to be awkward in that sense. They may even come off as they may come off as a little bit aggressive, in conversation, like really trying to get into your business. But outside of that, they're going to be much better. They're going to be much more fluent in social situations. Let's see. Do you know what types are more likely to lean towards audible arts versus the types that are more likely to lean towards visual arts? So you mean like music and then paintings? Is that what you mean? It depends. ISFPs, for example, love painting. ESTPs I have known to enjoy painting, but their paintings are usually more they're realism based. They want to create a painting as close to reality as possible, oftentimes, unless of course they're making art for a very specific genre or what have you. In which case they'll change their art to something else. But ESTPs, though, they really enjoy painting things to look realistic. As for music arts, I've heard, like ESFPs, of course, enjoy music a great deal, that I've noticed. In terms of art creation, now, granted, creating art, like something truly unique and absolutely creative, requires a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. And so you may collaborate with someone who has a preference for extroverted intuition to come up with something. But I would say that extroverted sensors are probably more apt to do audible arts like music, I would say. Let's see. I'm trying to guess what my manager is now. You asked yesterday. Now, since you asked yesterday, well, good luck. I assume you don't know them personally, so it can be difficult. Can be difficult from time to time, especially if you're not, 10 years experienced in the field. Let's see. Stealing from who? Stealing in general is something that I think is probably not good. Generally speaking. Now, of course, there's some, Robin Hood situations where there's some nasty old king who just taxes the people for no reason, just so he can bathe in a pool of gold coins. Yeah, sure. Taking from him, I would feel less bad about it. Taking from, the king. Does function affect dreams? It has been my experience that yes, it does tend to affect dreams. I've heard hundreds of people tell me about their dreams over the course of the past 10 years. And they seem to be different. I dream in chapters oftentimes. I don't know how many of you do that, but I'll have a dream and then I'll have no real recollection of it. But as soon as the dream starts, it continues from where it would last leave off. And once, they're often horrifying. So I assume that has more to do with things like diet, current life circumstances, and those kinds of things. So I might steal, but I believe in being fair. You should try to be fair. If I steal from work and I'm caught and fired for it, that's fair. Yeah, probably. What types are likely to love people just as much as they hate? 50-50-ish. Well, I've been talking with Ven about this, not more recently, but love and hate are so commonly used as phrases that they've virtually lost meaning as words. So I would like to translate those words into something that might make more sense, to me anyway. So what types are likely to like people just as much as they dislike people? And why do you think that? It's personal preference in people. There is really no types that are likely to 50-50 on liking half the people and then disliking the other half the people. Although I would say that there are some types that are more tolerant of others, and that's, of course, a stronger preference to extroverted feelers. They are more tolerant of more people. So I would say that. Let's see. Also, I meant, what do you think of this and not why? I'm not sure what you mean. I'll have to try that question again. Introverted intuition plus extroverted feeling plus introverted thinking seems like a very desirable stack. It absolutely can be, except that, like most things, there are unintended consequences to having such a function preference. There are unintended consequences. So what I have found in INFJs is that their life tends to slow down a little bit from the beginning. Like, they can have a good plan and they'll be working on it, but if they've got family ties and the family needs help or to be taken care of, that will slow them down. They'll, especially when it comes to things like saving money. They, if they come from a poor family, but the, we're talking about an INFJ in particular here. Their family's not doing well, and they have something extra. Well, then they may give away that extra stuff to the family, which in turn slows them down. That kind of a thing. Now, eventually, of course, even the INFJ will get tired of their plans not moving, as per the schedule. And then they start to just distance themselves from, what would otherwise be loved ones. And they can end up alone towards the end of their life because they're so focused on themselves and they tend to act. You can't 100% be focused on yourself and focused on other people at the same time. You can't do that. INFJs are usually focused on themselves, and they try to be cooperative with other people as much as they can. But eventually they get old enough, and they have this arbitrary line in which they will be helpful to you until this point. Once you've reached this point, I will stop helping you because now you are interfering with my plans and you're taking up too much of my time. You start interfering with all the things that I want to do, and then they cut those people off. So there is a time in which that does happen. Now, in terms of just for yourself, yeah, INFJ would be great to be because you'll be focused on yourself. You still got that cooperative nature, so people tend to like you more often than dislike you. You can use that to get ahead in life. Absolutely. It's a great function stack to have on paper. But eventually it goes bad, just like it is with every other personality. There's always these hard negatives that you've got to take in regards to your cognitive function preferences. It's always going to be a disadvantage somewhere. A dangerous dare. Let's see what we got here. Can you give a couple of examples of how environment might affect a person and their function expression? Absolutely. ISTJs. And I suppose ESTJs as well. They both require a level of programming. ISTJs require, they demand more programming. ESTJs maybe a little less programming. A little bit, not by some huge margin, but a little bit less. So what happens is they are, so we're going to use the ISTJ. Where they grew up, how they grew up, whether or not they had a two-parent household, the kinds of the level of crime in the area, these all determine how the ISTJ is going to move forward in life. All of those things. So an ISTJ that grows up in Central California where crime is rampant, drug use is everywhere, people are getting attacked constantly, that's going to change how you and your, how your life's going to be, as one would imagine. That's going to change because you're all about your programming. So if you grow up, let's say, hating the police because they keep taking your friends away, or you grew up and the best way to get quick cash was to do, to become a drug dealer. You learn to do it, and then all of a sudden you're 21 years old and you find yourself looking at 5 years behind bars because, well, your programming told you that this was the best way to go about living life, is essentially to have a life of crime. So you're screwed, when because you need that level of programming, and that's what you absorbed. Okay, that sucks. Now take the same ISTJ, except put them in like some super low crime rate area. Let's throw them in like, is Vermont pretty low on crime? They keep using that as an example for low rates of crime, so I'm not sure if that's accurate. But let's say you grow up in an incredibly low crime rate area where it's all about community and spending time with your neighbors and having barbecues and, always being polite to one another. And, eventually, maybe going to work for whatever business your father runs or whatever. Then, yeah, way different. You're going to have a way different life than the person that grew up in Central California. It's way different. So that's an example of cognitive functions and then those expressions. Now, of course, that's probably one of the more extreme, severe example. One of the easier examples to use in that particular way. But yes, your whole environment will affect things. So, for example, let's say you grow up in a third world country, and you needed every day was a struggle for survival. It was all about trying to make money so that you could afford food for that day, and doing it in whatever ways that you needed to. However, let's say that you are a preferenced introverted feeler. Well, you're gonna how would having a moral and ethical response to things really help you in survival? How much is it going to? I'm sure it does help to some degree, but how often is it really going to come into play? How often is that going to help you? The answer is probably not as much. And so you're going to rely on more logic. You're going to try and find information that you feel is good and is correct and will be helpful. You'll go off your instincts to survive. And so that can leave you maybe a little more untrusting of people. People, if you grow up in an environment where everyone's kind of always looking out for themselves all the time, you're going to have a different morals and ethical outlooks on things. Understandably. So that was maybe a little bit more of a more difficult example of how your cognitive functions can change. Growing up in a rich family, growing up in a poor family, you're going to have different circumstances in your life that will inevitably change how you use the functions that you would like to preference.
Are you able to heal up?
Everything is relevant. What do we got here? Let's see. Oh, we had more questions here. If I find high introverted feeling users to be rather draining in the long term, what can that say about my type? It just means you're disinterested in what they have to say. That's all. Just disinterested. I've known all kinds of types that aren't interested in hearing about other people's feelings. I've heard other introverted feelers not care about the feelings of other people. They're not interested. They'd rather talk about their feelings. Sure, why not? You're inherently not going to be, as interested in what's going on in someone else's life if you're, particular personalities. Let's see. But it just says that you are disinterested. That's the overall gist here. Just generally disinterested in what other people have to say. INFPs typically love hearing what other people have to say, especially if it's emotionally charged stuff. Understandable. ENFPs are generally the same way. Let's see here. Probably have extroverted feelings somewhere in your stack, I would think. LOL, they drain me after a while. Oh, that was a response to that one. Let's see. What type specifically? It's all contextual. Like you could find literally any type that's going to be getting drained off of what someone has to say. It's completely contextual. For example, if I've already had relations with someone, I oftentimes find myself less interested in what they have to say feelings wise, because generally I was only listening to their feelings so that I could get a desired outcome. But once I have learned someone, I would tend to get less than enthused about hearing more about them, I suppose. So, and context is important. ENTJs in general do not care how you feel. They do not care. So, there's that. ESTJs also probably don't care how you feel either. However, it might be their societal obligation, through introverted sensing, that tells them that they should listen to what you are feeling. So that's also a possibility. That depends on how they were raised. Let's see. Although I can imagine that they would drain other FI types as well. Yeah, possibly. I have found that people that are often highly emotional do not want to necessarily listen to the emotions of other people. What type do you usually look up to? I don't. What would you like to develop in yourself? Probably more introverted intuition if I could. I would try to develop more of that. If it were possible, I would do that. Talking about programming, why would you say type is born or made? If made, what influences and when? So my best guess on this is that you are generally who you are, right? So if we're using, we'll go ahead and use the acronyms, which I don't particularly enjoy, but let's use the acronyms. So let's say you've got an ISFJ. Let's use that. That ISFJ could have been an ESFJ, possibly. This is a theory that I've got, but because of life circumstances, they had to develop certain functions to preference using them more than the others. And so when it comes to whether you're made or born, I think that you've got the last three letters when you're born, but depending on life circumstances, it can possibly change from an E to an I, or you decide whether it's going to be an I or an E as you're growing up, depending on your environment. I think it's possible anyway. I think there could be a case to be made for it. But in terms of changing any of the other letters, no. Let's see. Could environment cause someone to have more developed 5 to 8 functions, not more developed than the functions 1 to 4, but more developed than someone of the same type in different environments? Let's see. Could environment cause someone to have more developed? I think that you are certainly born with, these specific preferences for certain functions. But I think that, let's take an INFP, for example. Okay, an INFP cares more about personal feelings, codes of ethics, morals, values, etc., etc. Okay, then they express how they feel about things on a more regular basis. Well, tell them that they now have to help work on the Hadron Collider. For some reason, let's say, that they were told that they need to go help on the Hadron Collider. They know nothing about the Hadron Collider. They know nothing of how any of it works, really. They may understand the concept, but that's as far as it goes. So over the next year, if they wanted to be helpful, they may end up having to develop other functions. They may have to start developing their introverted thinking, being the last function in the list. They may have to learn more about that. Or at the very least, they may have to develop their extroverted thinking and start, going with whatever the logic is of the people around them. They may have to develop that more. Now, they're still going to have a preference for, caring more about the feelings, but they may have a greater understanding of their extroverted thinking. So circumstances can help someone learn more about functions that they don't normally preference. I think that's possible. I think it happens a lot, actually. Now, they're still going to have a preference for using those first two functions. They're always going to want to go back to that. Do you think solipsism is inevitable for ENTPs? No. It's like that's the opposite. Solipsism is... I don't think it's always inevitable for everyone. However, the idea that you believing that the only consciousness that can truly exist is just yours, and that essentially nothing happens, outside of your purview of existence, that's kind of... I mean, for one, that's kind of silly. And I don't actually know too many people that truly are afflicted with, these severe cases of solipsism. But I have seen it in ISFPs. I have seen that. So, you're welcome, Mystic. Have a good day, or rest of your day, or night, or whatever. But no, I don't think that solipsism is inevitable for ENTPs. Unless I, of course, have a different definition of solipsism, in which case that is my fault. Let me Google it again. Google. The quality of being very self-centered or selfish. Yeah, no. That's, in terms of philosophy, the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. Right. So, as a human being in general, not just ENTP specifically, but you're not certain that other people have a consciousness. You assume that they have a consciousness because you have a consciousness, right? And so you assume that these other people do. But do you really know? As far as you know, they're just very well programmed biological creatures, as far as you know. But as for the non philosophical definition of it, the quality of being very self-centered or selfish, that's typically something that you find in introverted intuitives. That is inevitable, most certainly. Let's see. So yeah, solipsism is more for, in terms of the philosophical definition, I would say it's not inevitable at all. As a matter of fact, it would be, something that's not going to happen unless, of course, the ENTP comes up with the understanding that, oh my goodness, I am, in fact, the only one with a consciousness. If they somehow figured that out, then sure, that could happen, but I don't think that's the case, personally.
Thank you for stopping by.
Ven, are you still there?
Take a look at the quest list.
Ven's dead. We knew her well.
Best of luck.
Let's see here. She might just be muted as well. All right. What's next? Did I miss a question?
Let's go!
We talked about the environments and things,
Behold, the paragon of
which is good. It's more, and of course, environmental development is more for, as I mentioned, introverted sensors than any of the other types. Extroverted sensors respond to the stimuli of their environment, which can affect them in some ways, but if you switch them out of that environment, they'll adapt to that as well. What function was the hardest for you to learn / understand? Well, we'll use the whole idea of translating a standard MBTI definition to something that you can see in real life. The one that was the hardest to understand? I mean, none of them were particularly difficult to nail down. Maybe extroverted thinking, the idea of finding consistency in the external world. Maybe that one took a little bit more time to really get down and to see it, but that might have been the hardest one to figure out. I think that if you spend enough time pondering the definitions of these cognitive functions, you would inevitably arrive at the same conclusions that I did after enough practice with them. So I don't think they're particularly difficult. Now, the hardest part is convincing people that already, took in a bunch of third-party information from a great many other unreliable sources, and started using that as their definition for the functions, because then I show them what the actual definitions are from the website, and they're like, what is this? This isn't good. Like, this isn't what I learned. And they tend to have problems with it. So, do you believe in shadow functions? I believe every person uses every function every day. So if you're just talking about the functions that are in the 5th through 8th position, then yes, I do believe they exist. Because everyone uses every function every day. So yes, I do. Consistency in the external world sounds like looking for patterns. No, just consistency. I mean, sure, it's a bit of a pattern, but so when everyone is saying that this is the correct information, that's the consistency in the external world that they're looking for. The external world includes people, and so they want people to agree on something being correct, as an example. Yes, that is the consistency that they are looking for. Oh, goodness. Then I've got crabs. Or something crab-like. This is a very unfun fight. Let's see, consistency and external. Yeah, we already know. Do you think certain learning styles correlate with certain types? Most certainly. The United States education system is designed for introverted sensors. Understandably so. It is designed for that. It is designed for repetition and therefore education. Successful learning. And introverted sensors love committing things to memory. They want rules, procedures, schedules. They want all that stuff. So, if you are not an introverted sensor, you're oftentimes going to have more difficulty in learning all the myriad subjects. Not every subject you're going to have difficulty with, because some subjects you're actually going to enjoy. But in the United States, it's all about homework, homework, homework. Bomb the tests, fine, but we'll still give you a passing grade. Just make sure you do all the homework. And that's a problem. At least it was for me. Let's see. It's hardly designed for me. Yes, Joseph, as I said, they're designed for introverted sensors, not extroverted sensors. It's designed for introverted sensing. I think Ven's working, and that's why she's not responding to anything I say. What about learning through seeing examples, learning through doing it yourself, learning through reading about it, and learning through hearing instructions? Well, those are all different ways of learning, so you're wondering which types would be more preferenced in learning in those very specific ways. So for me, I would prefer to learn by doing, if I can. Now, I can learn in any way. It doesn't matter. You can tell me about it, and I'll do my best to remember exactly the things you said. Now, it's not the best way for me to do it. I would most likely have to take notes if you're trying to give me a long list of schedules or routines or procedures to follow. I'm not going to be able to remember it. I'm going to lose interest immediately in listening. And so that's not going to be particularly helpful. However, doing it myself, I have found to be the best way for me to learn, to remember it. So there's that. I would imagine that there's a lot of extroverted sensors that probably believe they're the same way, and that they need to be doing it to learn it. Oh my goodness, I don't have a moment to breathe. Oh, at least they can hurt each other. That's helpful. I'm getting super soakered. Anyway. Let's see. But yeah, I think that introverted sensors just in general are going to have a better time learning things through being told how it's done. That's been my experience with introverted sensors, and then of course that makes sense given that they have a strong preference for introverted sensing. So memory, and so they shouldn't have they don't often have issues. As a matter of fact, they don't have issues just reading a manual and then you're done. As an example, boy, we love examples.
My duty like this.
Write it now.
Let's see what we got. So not really much correlation. I would say that if I were to teach an introverted sensor something, I would have it written down, and then they would follow the instructions. So there's that. Extroverted sensors and probably extroverted intuitives shouldn't have that much of an issue. Doing it themselves to learn it may take a couple of tries, but they'll eventually get it down. As for introverted intuitives, I think that they can learn in a multitude of ways, I would imagine. But I'll tell you what, though, they tend to have difficult times remembering when their plans fail. They have difficulty letting go that perhaps their best laid plans are not great. Tend to forget about all the mistakes that they themselves would say that they made. They forget about them. Seeing examples of how it's done. So like mirror neuron learning. I think most humans are pretty good at that. Imagining themselves doing that same motion. Whether or not, I mean, obviously that's no substitute for real experience, but I would say that most humans are more adept at the mirror neuron learning. In my that's what I think. I think most humans are pretty good at it. Usually it depends on the type of thing that needs to be learned as well. So if it's, let's say you're learning martial arts techniques, is a preferenced extroverted intuitive going to be as good at learning just from watching as, let's say, an extroverted sensor? Probably not. Do you think certain types like to talk about politics or political issues? Yes, I have found that ISTPs like talking about politics. ESTPs, more often than not, don't like talking about politics. They think it's a huge waste of time, understandably so. And ENTPs, of course, enjoy talking about politics. INTPs like talking about politics. INTJs like talking about politics. So. Your older bro is an INFP, but he's acting like an ISTP most of the time. Then you may not know what personality type your brother is. I think that's... an INFP can try to emulate an ISTP's behavior, most certainly, but it's not going to be comfortable for them, and they're going to, especially if they're young, they're just trying to learn how to act that way. But to truly be, to truly act like how an ISTP would act, that takes many years of experience. Being an ISTP, typically. But I don't know why your INFP brother would be acting like an ISTP. And as for the whole shadow function thing coming out, you can try to be something that you're not. You can try. But without the proper experience, you're going to screw it up. So. Looks like I'm the wrong type of ISTP. Depending on where you live, politics may not just at all be an interest, but if you live in the United States, which is what I'm talking about, yeah, you'll be more interested in politics, because we got a lot of dumb things happening in the United States as of late. Like, for example, we have a corpse as a president currently. That's weird, right? I figured you'd laugh at something I said eventually.
I actually just woke up. I fell asleep.
Oh, thank you.
No, it wasn't you. I haven't slept since 7 a.m. of yesterday. Like I
Oh,
didn't sleep at all last night. Yeah.
got it.
Mm.
What about social issues? Well, oftentimes extroverted feelers enjoy talking about social issues, I have found. But what kinds of social issues? Anything in particular? Uh, I can only be so controversial in these live streams, otherwise they don't get monetized. Let's see. But yes, certain types of social issues, like ESFJs, for example, they love spreading and talking about rumors of people. They enjoy it.
Let's do this.
Wouldn't trade today for the world.
I thought introverted feeling type liked to talk about that stuff. About social issues, they like to talk about their issues, typically. ISFPs, ESFPs, they love talking about their issues that they have. But we're talking about social issues like as a blanket statement, like all social issues. Well, that's more extroverted feeling. They want to know about what social issues people are having so they can better manipulate the situation, maybe even fix it. Possibly, if you're lucky. Let's see. Urchin is a nice voice to sleep to. Thank you, Sleepy. You weirdo.
Well then.
You really are. That's why I joined. I was like, huh, this is gonna be
Oh,
very nice and pleasant.
nice and pleasant. Need to do some what did Moon Globes call it? ASMR or something,
Yeah, Bob was saying.
and
Some ASMR.
just start reading stories and then posting them somewhere.
Yes, which is what I'm about to use you as.
Oh, great. Let's see.
Make you my first mate.
Let's turn that off. My goodness, that was irritating. Apparently, it didn't count as me being in battle.
Here we go.
Let's see. Like social moral issues, trans rights, abortions, yeah, those kinds of things that obviously cause controversy. Those are things that extroverted feelers try to, they stay away from, especially the younger ones. Like, don't say anything that's going to disrupt, people's perceptions of me. I want everyone to, like me so that I can be in their lives. So stay away from certain, those kinds of topics, except for when you're in private company. But, introverted feelers are more likely to, of course, go on stage and then cry out about how people with fictional gender identities should be given special rights and things like that. And it's like, yeah, introverted feelers, yes, they are more likely to do that. So introverted feeling would be more interested in those things or voicing those things, more often voicing those things. They definitely are. For example, if anyone remembers good old Jordan Peterson, he, the first video footage I ever saw him in was him defending his position on the whole government trying to push through legislation to force people to use proper pronouns for someone, regulating speech. And he had obviously, someone with introverted feeling trying to put words in his mouth or accuse him of taking a certain position that he didn't take. And because they're not thinking it through, obviously, they know that their feelings are hurt and they care about the feelings of other people. And so they, have their moments. So that kind of stuff. But yes, introverted feelers may not always have the most coherent arguments levied against you. Not always. Is Jordan Peterson an ENTP or an INTP? See, I had Jordan tagged as an INTP. He's an INTP who took to what would I say? I would say that he he found a weakness socially and decided to try and work on it. He found people to be complicated but fascinating and wanted to learn more about them. And so he did what, a typical INTP would do, and he would categorize them and then study them as if they were lab rats. And it worked out for him. He's very successful in that particular field. Are most podcasts just garbage information? Which podcasts? Podcasts talking about government corruption? Probably not garbage. Maybe, hopefully they're not garbage. Hopefully they're talking about the truth of, government corruption and then trying to spread that information around. So, I mean, that seems like a positive, I suppose. We need less corruption in government, don't you think? Now, podcasts that are talking about, the Kardashians and what they're up to, assuming that those podcasts exist, maybe less than useful information, possibly. Ven wouldn't agree with that. She would probably listen to it every day. But I was expecting a response. I didn't get one. But Ven loves the Kardashians. So I would imagine that...
Whoa. I just came back. And
just came back.
I do not love the Kardashians, guys. That's not how it is.
Not how it is.
Yes, no. I like to watch those reality TV shows, and then I'll go and watch like psychology videos and break down like their behaviors and like how and why they reacted the way they reacted. So that's why I like it.
Whatever you say, Kardashian lover.
Oh,
just which is fine. Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, if it was, it wouldn't be nothing wrong with that. But since I'm not a Kardashian lover,
okay. Oh, we're done with that quest. Wonderful. Oh, I've had a bit of a runny nose today.
Here.
Yeah. You know what that means.
You're sick.
Well.
That was the most obvious answer.
It means that it's time for NyQuil. Or, Dollar General Health, nighttime cold and flu relief. 10% alcohol.
Well.
That's realistically what it means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I assumed. But.
Ask me a question, Ven. We're out of questions. Excuse me. Bless me.
And bless you, yes.
Thank you.
Why does NE have such a hard time with SE, understanding SE?
Because when your mind is always focused on what could be rather than what is, you tend not to notice what is as much. And for me, that manifests as some simple things as not caring about, the state of my living space. I also bump into stuff, knock things over. I'm relatively clumsy, believe it or not. Clumsy and disorganized.
I believe that too.
Okay, then. Great.
You'll do great.
Water. Let's see, somebody asked me a question. So when you were studying the functions and how they manifest in people, did you straight up ask them questions similar to when you type people? No, not always. That didn't come until later. That was like after maybe like year 2 or 3 or something. It's been too many years. But I would start with people that I knew more intimately and knew more about their routines and do my studying from there. You think low extroverted sensing can make special awareness difficult?
I so look forward to our hunt.
What kind of special awareness? What are we like? Extrasensory perceptions, ESP, ESP. Yeah, right. Is that what we're talking about? Because I don't. But in terms of paying more attention to your surroundings, I mean, you could train yourself to to look for certain aspects in real life, but to just have a general awareness, obviously extroverted sensing is going to have a bit of an advantage there. Someone who's got more of a preference for it. Oh, spatial awareness. Yeah, you're going to have less spatial awareness. You will miss things that an extroverted sensor would point out immediately and say, what are you doing? You missed this. Are you blind? I've been told that a lot in my life. Are you blind? You can't see that? I'm like, no, I can't. What is it? What am I looking for?
My mom used to test me a lot. Like, how did you not see that it was right in front of you? I was not paying attention to that.
I was not paying attention. Don't know what to tell you.
I was fighting dragons in my head.
There you go. But yes, low extroverted sensing and spatial awareness, you are going to have difficulties. That is going to happen. That's a very normal thing. Ah, did it too late. But yeah, I am real bad at spatial awareness, for certain. When I'm focused on something, in this particular instance, I'm focused on this Toby Kadachi from Monster Hunter Rise. I don't pay attention to what's going on around me. Something has to noticeably change in my peripheral before I notice it.
That is my favorite boss. Actually.
Why is it your favorite boss
because
monster?
Of the name.
Toby Kadachi.
Yeah, it was the best name to say when we had to go fight a boss. Which one are you fighting? Toby Kadachi.
Damn, it's getting late. I figured it's probably pretty late there in Russia. I would assume.
The monster is down. Take aim.
Impressive.
Yeah, it is also time for me to sleep, guys. So good night, everyone.
What about low extroverted intuition for ISFJs and ISTJs? How does that manifest? It manifests typically as a disdain for people that spend time thinking outside the box. They don't want to sit there and talk about, you know, what could be's and the what ifs and the possibilities. They don't want to sit there for very long to talk about it. If it's if it's an ISFJ, for example, they will put up with it for as long as what is socially acceptable. And then they will find reasons to get away from you if you keep talking about it. It's better to just ask them about what they want to talk about, and assuming you get an answer, then, you can have a conversation on that. Now, then of course, you'll get bored, of course, but, maybe it's better that you be bored than not having an ISFJ as a friend. Of course, that's just my opinion on that, I suppose. Objectively, it's better to have an ISFJ as a friend than someone who thinks you're really annoying. Let's see. Do you think your own upbringing has led to any bias or understanding of these functions? I'm sure that I don't think I have a bias. I think I have spent enough time logically determining the correct translations for these functions from theory to practical use. I know that I have a problem with extroverted thinking, though. Badly do I have a problem, and I am most certain that my upbringing has caused that to be a thing. Got a big problem with it. How do you think Andrew Tate gets funded? I assume from people giving him money for podcasts and things. Also, I've heard that he's also a business owner. I heard, but I could be wrong on that. No idea. I agree. ISFJs are pretty great, and so I do my best not to get on their bad side. Not because I think they're gonna like ruin my life or harm me or do something bad, but because you would rather have one working with you rather than one working against you. So you want one to help. Let's see. Remember to like and subscribe this stream. Yeah, pretty sure I was supposed to be saying that periodically throughout the stream. Keep forgetting to do that. Remember to like and subscribe, and of course, join the Discord, and then you are free to ask me all kinds of questions throughout the day. If that's something that interests you. Or, of course, we can talk and have some voice chat time. Maybe we'll do a voice chat video party or something that Bob keeps recommending, but we never do. Let's see, yeah, but extroverted thinking is in a lot of things. You have to use extroverted thinking to help TI, don't you? Well, you can start with something. So the idea of extroverted thinking is to simply to believe the logic of other people. That's how it mostly manifests. If it's in a book that was vetted by a school and then the college thinks that this book is something that you should be reading and all the information in it is correct, you believe it. Okay, it's all correct then, and move on to the next thing. You don't need to ponder it anymore. So, do I do that with some things? I'm certain that I do. I'm sure that I couldn't pick out exactly at this very moment what parts of extroverted thinking I just choose to go with, but I question everything. And I want to make sure that I have an understanding of it. And if I don't have a complete understanding of something and someone asks me about it, I will say, this is what I read. I will preface my answers with that. I read that this is when this happened because I saw it on Wikipedia. Whether or not that's true, I don't actually know. You'll notice that I do that a lot. When someone asks me about something. Oh, I heard this thing, or I read about that thing, or I watched a video once where this person said this thing, but that's the information that I have on it. Whether or not it's actually true, I couldn't tell you. Is space real? I have my reasons to believe that it is, but realistically, do I know for certain that it's real? I couldn't say that I do know for certain. I just believe that it is because I have my other reasons for believing it. Do you think we will ever do time travel? Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by time travel, because right now we know how to slow time. We know how it's done. We can slow time. And in some cases, we know how to get it to stop entirely for, the particular viewer. For example, if I were to throw you into a black hole and you were somehow able to survive being that close to one, you would, time would essentially stop for you. It would stop. For you specifically, but of course everything else around you is going at its normal speed. So in Remnant 2, a game that my brother got me for my birthday, there was a race of aliens in a completely different reality that had designed, of course, not just interstellar travel, but they had the ability to travel inside of a black hole. And they believed that to uncover the secrets of the universe, you would have to go into this black hole that at first, this black hole was at the center of the universe. And so they went there, they went inside, and they stayed there for 100 years in their time. Well, when they came out, the heat death of the universe had happened. And so entropy happened. And the only thing left was that same supermassive black hole at the center of the universe, and nothing else existed. So, do we? Yeah, we can go forward in time. For example, we have a satellite in orbit that has to be adjusted. Its time has to be adjusted every so often because it's slightly, it's going. What was it? Slightly faster? Am I thinking of that correctly? Yeah, it's like it's moving slightly faster than the time here on Earth because when you're here on Earth, time you're closer to that center of gravity. The gravity is of course stronger here, so time slows here. But the satellite in orbit, it's ever so slightly less gravity there, so the time actually moves a little bit faster for the satellite, and so its clocks have to be adjusted. Didn't they do some test? I can't remember the details of it now, but I was observing two atoms basically being in two places at once. Yeah, like quantum mechanics or quantum entanglement, possibly. Yeah, they do tests like that all the time. Love that stuff. That's basically magic, right? It's practically magic what this stuff is. And that's where I think the really cool stuff will happen, like future technology. It's all quantum mechanics. Teleportation, for example, and then of course eventually time travel. Yeah, being able to maybe displace gravity from you so that you can see things in real time. Stuff like that. That's the future. It's quantum mechanics. Can't wait, assuming that I won't be dead when it becomes more of a popular thing, I guess. More mainstream, more commercial. But yeah, cool stuff, I thought. Let's see, the flooded forest.
Here we go.
I'm eager to get started.
And I shall not miss.
Behold,
The paragon of hunting prowess.
What's next? What else we got here? Started jumping away from MBTI, didn't we? But that'll happen. That's what happens in all my streams. And today's stream will end in about 30-ish minutes. I believe I have some family things to take care of today. It did start a little bit later than normal, though. Come on, Bob. Throw another question at me. And there it is. I don't understand antimatter nuclear bombs. If it touches anything, it destroys it, right? How do they get it into a bomb without touching something? I would assume maybe some forms of magnetism. Or perhaps they've developed some kind of material that can resist antimatter, possibly. But I would assume some kind of magnetism to keep it in place. Just a guess. I have no actual idea. Now, if my friend Michael were here, he would answer that question because he would have studied up on it. Because he's an INTP, and that's what they like to spend their time on. Things that don't actually affect you currently, but are interesting to think about.
found it. Objective spotted.
Slap. Oh no, he's gonna scream again.
I believe it has become. Get out of the way!
Don't you think AI will speed the process for discovering the possibility of quantum mechanics doing many things? Hopefully, assuming they could program it to pay more attention to that kind of thing. Then yeah, certainly, that could help. Also, I assume it will also lead to the creation of the super AI, right? That Elon Musk keeps worrying about. My friend Michael welcomes the potential new AI overlords. Says that to me all the time. Like, I welcome it. I'm like, why would you? You weirdo. Can I have your friend Michael's contact info? Yeah, he's in my family Discord.
Shoot your shot!
You can message him from there.
You asked for it.
Slap, slap. Oh, goodness. And we'll hope that the AI is... we hope the AI will be merciful, or and obviously the Matrix idea doesn't work unless they were able to figure out some better form of energy gathering from humans and pods.
Ammo goes in.
I just want to talk about the antimatter bomb. It's an interesting idea. It sounds hyper destructive. I worry. Uh, is it that when they come into contact, they bind to one another and then create nothing, like canceling the other out, matter and antimatter? Is that how that works? I'd have to ask him. Because if that were the case, then it would be an incredibly efficient bomb, right? Like, it only destroys things that it comes into contact with. So that would be neat. The only thoughts I may have on that is in regards to a fictional dimension called the Warp, in which matter by itself typically can't exist, and it starts to disintegrate without special protective procedures. How does introverted feeling manifest itself in ENFPs that aren't doing well in life? If they're not happy, then they tend to get very frustrated and irritated, very irritable, as most people would be, generally. Now, I'm not doing particularly great in life myself, but I have extroverted feeling as a stronger preference, so I at least pretend like everything's okay, and I don't want people to concern themselves with my well-being.
Very kind.
I'd rather they just assume that everything's great. But yes, ENFPs will not be able to hold that in as well as some other personality types if their life's, not going well. They'll have their outbursts. They may throw some stuff here and there. They may have these emotional outbursts where they might yell at someone, raise their voice sharply, because their point's not getting across, things like that. Generally irritable. May lead to bouts of depression, as one might suspect. But not me. I keep a smile on my face. I pretend everything's okay. I'm like the dog in that meme, where everything's on fire, and he says, this is fine. This is fine. Everything's fine. It's like that. That's how I do.
This'll probably sting a bit. It's infuriating.
Such nonsense doesn't scare me.
So, extroverted feeling comes up with its morals, ethics, values by observing what the group agrees on. It's not going to be their morals or values. They may respect someone's morals and values, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be their own. Introverted sensors get their morals and values from how they grew up. So their programming determines what their morals should be. As an example.
See if there's anything we can gather.
How are games made? What programming is used? I wonder. I'm not certain what... The closest I ever got to that was using Blender for about a couple weeks, and I made like a coffee cup on a table with lighting and whatnot, and then I made some kind of weird pinkish freak monster using the sculpt option. So I did those things. I'm aware everybody uses all 8 functions and whatnot, but for those who have higher extroverted feeling, is that mostly what keeps them ethical or moral? I don't think they're inherently I don't think that they're particularly ethical or moral. I think that they do whatever they want to do, so long as the end result is that people listen to them, care for their company, or find them to be pleasant company, and that everyone's doing okay.
I trust you hit your targets.
I don't think that they are particularly ethical or moral. Yeah, they can understand what the group values, but they don't really care. They just want to go with whatever's going to work. So there's that. But, for example, in ESFJ, they hang around other people with the same cultural values. So they would prefer to be around those people. ENFJs and INFJs are going to have their own morals and values. However, oftentimes it seems that their values correlate with that of your stereotypical Christian morals and values. So there's that. And so oftentimes I find, because I'll ask people, I've always asked people about their religion when I started learning about MBTI and INFJs, typically Christian, same with ENFJs, typically Christian. So that's just here in this country. I'm sure if they were somewhere else, they may have a different religion, possibly.
Please select the quest that best suits you.
Have you ever met a psychopath? Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure I have. But in terms of actually, like, for sure diagnosing one, like, just not even really much of a confirmation, really. But I was pretty certain that there was a man that I had met. He was in his late 40s. And I was like, you're a psychopath. I can smell it on you. But psychopaths, not always, but are oftentimes pretty good at blending in. Let's see. You now have my full attention. My nephew shocked my out of my nap with a sudden call. Oh. Like if they understand the group frowns upon hitting your kids to get them to behave, they will then not hit their kids and appear to be ethical or whatever. Yeah. If they grew up not being hit, then they will assume that hitting children is universally bad and you shouldn't be doing it because they didn't grow up with it. So, crap, I forget which monster I'm fighting. Aurora Somnicanth Anime. Guess the Magna Mallow's worse. How would you describe INFP ethics and values? Well, I suppose that depends on the INFP, but generally speaking, INFPs want goodwill amongst everyone, to always be happy and having a good time. Everyone should do whatever they can do to be happy and to, so long as it doesn't make other people unhappy. You know, stereotypical morals and values from what I've seen. You know, just be good to one another. Kind of like a Jesus thing. I figured Jesus was an INFP. What are some similarities you noticed between INFPs and INTPs? They both sometimes have difficulties talking to people. Even with their imagination, they use their imagination for different things. More often than not. So, different tastes. INFPs usually aren't super big into science and theoreticals, hypotheticals, things like that. They're not as interested. They're not going to spend a whole lot of time searching them, talking about them. I've been talking to one INFP lately. Name is Kiwi. I've been calling him Kiwi anyway. And she likes to experience what it would be like to be in scenarios, in different relationships, things like that. She enjoys watching romance movies, as one would imagine, and enjoys crying over them. So, there you go. Now, INTPs, of course, don't really care about those things. They would instead like to imagine what it would be like if they were the overlord of some kind of futuristic human society. And they may end up playing other games that are related to that kind of behavior. I think Michael was playing my INTP friend of 20 years. He liked playing Endless Space. Controlling human societies and dictating their laws and whatnot. Let's see. Aside from you personally, what types would have an issue with a high extroverted thinking user? Types that are going to have a problem with it? We're talking about, would they openly express that they have a problem with that person? ISTPs would do that. I've seen them do that. But I'm sure there's a lot of types that might have a problem with that person's particular brand of extroverted thinking. However, they may not exactly express it. They just have an issue with it. But ISTPs, I have found, are much more talkative, much more expressive with pointing out when someone's logic defies their own.
It's in quite a frenzied state.
I believe it has become
Let's see.
angry.
What types are likely to end up psychopaths? ENTJs. ENTJs, just by virtue of the MBTI math, are psychopaths. They have very little in the way of feelings, and they choose to ignore their feelings very often. Even to the point where it seems like they just don't feel it, which would be the definition of a psychopath. They don't feel feels. And if they do feel feels, then they get ignored. And I mean really ignored.
Oh, you better love this one.
Job.
Positively unstoppable.
Thanks.
That was kind of you.
Let's see. Let's take a look here. The same, let's see, the same types can clash with each other, right? With one another, right? Like two ESTJs might clash if their way of doing things is different. Absolutely, that will happen. As a matter of fact, and let's take a supervisor at the Walmart, ESTJ. Everything's maybe kind of going more or less okay, but they want to bring someone else in and see if they can do it better. Well, they pull in another ESTJ from a slightly more successful store, and they start talking about, you know, oh, well, you need to do things this way because you've been doing it this way and this is wrong. You need to try something else. This is what, you know, I was able to figure out from over here. They're going to be like, you know, I have a problem with it. I think this is working and everything's good. And, you know, it may devolve into something a little bit nastier than that. But generally speaking, yes, they will clash. However, the reason that they clash is because their extroverted thinking is at different, it has acquired different knowledge. And so each of them believes that they have the best knowledge about that particular subject. So that's where it's going to be a problem. Do ESTJs feel things, or are they similar to ENTJ? I think that the ESTJ is forced. More often not, it's not going to be every single ESTJ because they're all going to grow up with, you know, different childhoods and, you know, different environments. But an ESTJ has functions that force them to interact with other people and to develop a rapport with those other people, thereby creating a sense of caring for other people. Now, I'm not saying that they won't just throw you under the bus if they need to up their profit margins, because they absolutely will, regardless of your standing with them. They will do that. But ESTJs, your typical introverted sensor, has to grow up in a environment in which community is important. Talking to people, loyalty is important, those kinds of things. So they usually end up picking up some forced feelings because, you know, generally speaking, as a human, you can't oftentimes control the chemical reactions in the brain, you know, just through sheer willpower. So if you grew up in an environment where you were forced to be around other people, forced to engage in community events, eventually you start to become familiar with those people and you start to care more. That's just automatic. And then then couple that with extroverted intuition being in the third position rather than the last. And so that, of course, cares about the perspectives of other people. They're more into the idea of thinking outside the box, especially if it's going to get them, you know, net them some profit. And that includes talking to other people. And so they can develop friendships and then develop, you know, their interest in community events and being a part of a community and things like that. And so ESTJs are forced, by virtue of their cognitive function preferences, they are forced to be more engaged with other humans. And then, of course, if they're a supervisor, you know, that likes to micromanage things, then absolutely, they're going to be, they're going to have a lot of people that they interact with on the daily. Man, that was annoying. If your mom was trying to ambush you outside your house, what would you do? Well, I assume that if I didn't know she was trying to ambush me, then I assume I would just do everything as normal and then get ambushed. Unless something was seriously out of place, in which case I will notice when something major is out of place, understandably. I might ask some questions. But if I knew that my mother wanted to ambush me outside, then I could do any number of things to prevent that from happening. One of which would be to, of course, climb out my window. That would be the simplest option. Another one would be to have something delivered to the house, and then have that person, naturally start up a conversation with the other person that's hiding outside of the house, waiting to ambush me. And their whole plan would be thrown off, and then they would maybe give up, hopefully. It's a thought. Oh, goodness. The NyQuil's hitting me. Starting to fall asleep. Bob, more questions. Go. Bam. Zero-sum discharge is really cool. It's rad. What are her intentions for ambushing? To kill him? No, that would ruin her plans for retirement. Can you kidnap your own child? Yeah, legally, yeah. What types tend to be pushy? Extroverted thinkers I have found to be awful pushy. More often than not, although it's more like, like ESTJs, ESFJs, pushy. Understandably pushy, because they have an understanding of how things are supposed to be. And if you're not following that, then you are going against the plan. And if you're going against the plan, then you're a problem. And so they're going to make you fit into that plan. Or try, anyway.
I believe it has become angry.
They'll do their best. But I am not
Wait until I finish reading.
someone that fits easily into those holes, I guess. That sounded way worse than I meant it to sound. My apologies. It's the NyQuil.
The one eats the dirt.
Oh, I slew the wrong monster. Whoops. But oftentimes, yes, ESTJs and ESFJs tend to be very, very pushy. But you can even find an ISFP to be very pushy if they believe that they have to be the one to take control of the situation.
What shall we do?
So there is that. What types only care about their own feelings and their own wants and don't care about how others feel or what they want? Are you going to sleep? No, I'm not going to sleep. I just need to fight off the effects of the antihistamine. That's what I'm trying to do now. Let's see, what types only care about their feelings? So the first one that comes to mind is ESFPs. ESFPs oftentimes really just care about their feelings. And you mostly notice that in conversation, because regardless of how you start the conversation, it will somehow evolve into talking about them and how they feel about things. So ESFPs tend to care most about their own feelings, typically. And then the ISFPs are maybe but it would be like a distant second, on that list. Yes, ISFPs care about their own feelings, obviously. But if they like you, then they're more apt to hear about your feelings. I'm not trying to get high. I said I was sick. So I took some NyQuil. You think I'm some kind of deviant? My goodness. Whatever would have given you that idea.
You've become the monster's target. Are you able to heal up? Fight in such a state.
I'll drown you in a sea of your
Let's see, which types are easy to get along with? Extroverted feelers are typically the easiest to get along with. I'm usually pretty easy to get along with, for sure. I'd like to think it works better though if you like me. So
Oh, you're gonna love this one.
I know you've got not the greatest memory. I don't either.
We have the advantage.
Smack the Aurora Somnicant.
I'll send you to Kingdom Come.
Just out of reach.
That monster.
It's aiming for you.
You need to recover quickly.
Yourself.
How did that not count as a counterattack? Which types are most likely to be agreeable? ISFPs, ISFJs. Those are the ones that came to mind immediately.
You've become a monster.
You're the target.
You require healing.
But ISFJs are not always hyper agreeable. Depending on what it is. So like if you have if you're the manager and you have an ISFJ that's supervising some other employees, yeah, they're going to be super agreeable more often than not. They will you go along with whatever the plan is of management. Makes sense. But which types are likely to daydream? Extroverted sensors and extroverted intuitives are likely to daydream more often than the others.
Targeting you.
Sights on you. You can't fight
Nice
such
one.
a state.
Trying to type my mom right now. She's waiting outside my room trying to ambush me. Or job. I can't see that last word there. It looks like a J.
Mind waiting a moment?
Trying to ambush you, I'd sneak around the back, but at the same time, I can't imagine there's a really good reason why you'd be avoiding your mother. So, should talk to her anyway. Deal with it.
That's the end of that.
Let's see, what are some similarities between ISFJs and ISFPs? They both usually end up helping people, but they do them for oftentimes completely different reasons. So, there's that. Wait, SE, why? Oh, why they're likely to daydream? Because they don't want to be...
For a break, huh?
So, for example, they'll be sitting at a desk in school. Neither an extroverted intuitive or an extroverted sensor wants to really be there. Extroverted sensors don't want to be reading a book, trying to learn about crap that they're never going to use in their life, so they daydream about what they would like to be doing. Whereas extroverted intuitives typically daydream about things that they wish would be happening. So something completely, fictional. Oftentimes they'll daydream about rocket ships or being in a relationship with, some celebrity or anything else. Anything other than, that.
Good job, buddy.
Hypocrite, you don't talk to your mom. Well, yeah, but my mom's also not waiting to talk to me outside, so. And your mom seems nice, so. Bite me. Let's see here. Oops. She's highly emotionally volatile, especially when she doesn't get her way. Well, a highly emotionally volatile woman in your life. Well, get used to it, nerd. What types would be a hypocrite? Types that maybe have poor memory and like to enforce their logic onto others. Let's take a look at some hypocritical things. I think it was not... I'm sure it was many years ago by now. My memory's terrible, as we've discussed. Was it Nancy Pelosi that put like a ban on gatherings of any kind and shut down, restaurants and salons and things like that? And wasn't she the one that was found at a restaurant eating or went to get her hair done or something like that? That's being a hypocrite. Very controlling and physically violent. I don't think your mother's going to get physically violent with you outside of your place of work. So quit being a sissy. Go out there. You talk for, you know, half an hour, and then she like slips you $500 and you go on your, you know, you go on your way. Right? Probably. Maybe. It doesn't respect boundaries. Well, not everybody does, so. Can you talk a bit about function in the tertiary and INF? How they manifest differently from dominant and auxiliary? Well, I keep talking about it, but the third position, the tertiary position, I number them, so I don't use any of the other phrases for it. Anyways, third position functions are the what I call advantaged functions. You use it solely for your advantage, and you don't use it so much that you get a bunch of negative consequences for it, or what you might perceive as negative. A dominant function is a function you cannot turn off. You live with it for your whole life, unless, of course, you get into a car accident or you're kicked in the head by a horse or something that causes brain damage. Maybe you do too many drugs that can cause brain damage. Can't turn it off. And as for the second position function, I call the active function. It's the one you actively, consciously choose to use. It's oftentimes it's perceived as the function you use the most by other people, because that's your go-to for conversation or how you handle situations. But no matter what those decisions are, they will still be colored by whatever decision is in the lead position. And you can't turn it off. So you're stuck with it, generally speaking. Oh, got him. Got him. Attached to the face. Slap, 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 slap. And then it kicked me off for no reason. Cool. Let's see. But yes, tertiary position, the advantage function, and then there's the lead position function, and then the active function in the second position. And that'll be like the 1,000,000th time I've said it. So the second position is sort of toggleable, most certainly. Like I don't go around enforcing the logic that I have come up with on every person that I meet or you know or talk to, you know, in general. I don't go around and do that. I would rather, especially in my old age, I would rather rely on my extroverted feeling to guide me through these, you know, situations. So when there's someone talking to me and they don't make a lot of sense, I can't turn it off. Like, well, I of course can turn it off in terms of expression, but it's always going to be bugging me when someone's saying something logically inconsistent, or they say one thing, but we know for certain that they had done another, you know, that kind of a thing. So you'll notice that a lot, but I choose not to talk about it. Instead, I can agree with them or placate their reasoning. Things like that. I could just choose to go that route. But I am always going to have introverted thinking letting me know that someone said something stupid. So the second position is sort of yeah, I read that part. It's not necessarily toggleable. You just choose. It's going to be turned on, I would assume, and generally, you know, a bit more often than not. It's just whether or not you choose to express it. It's a different story. I choose to express extroverted feeling more often in socially tense situations. But I'm an old man now, 35, and I've just found that it's a lot easier to get what I want from people when you placate them. That's how I do it anyway. Then, what do you think? Oh, right, she's asleep. What's up with my hair? Well, you're not going to ignore your second function. You can choose not to express it, though. It's not your most used function. It's the one you actively choose to use. It's what you preference. And I can be extroverted feeling pretty often, but eventually I'm going to get sick of the whole placating someone because they keep complaining about the same thing over and over again, not realizing that their decisions are the ones that are causing the problems. And eventually that logic will come out. But it's not ignored. It's just chosen not to be expressed. You'll still be experiencing that function. Just choose not to talk about it. Let's see. How do you imagine an IXFP, so an ISFP or an INFP, that was raised in an environment where they have to be the best? How do you think they'll grow up to be? Depressed, I would imagine, because they're not going to be the best. They're going to try, they'll do their best, but they won't be the best. So I imagine they'll be more sensitive to criticism. Upsets them greatly when they don't do well enough, might cripple their confidence. To be the best at something requires, I mean, that's competition. You're literally competing with other people, and they're not fans of that all by itself. They don't necessarily enjoy competing with other people. Oh, I know why I'm not doing a lot of damage here. Still using the dragon weapon. Does that mean you can use your third more often than your second? No, we're talking about expressions. If you're most, in my particular instance, I express extroverted feeling when having conversation with most people, and the reason for that is well, the topics of conversation are usually ones that I'm not all that interested in, and so it's just easier for me to placate whatever it is that they're, the other person's talking about. It doesn't really bother me any, and all it ends up doing for me is is having people perceive me as pleasant company. So it's just a benefit for me to do it that way. But in my mind, I'm always thinking about the logical inconsistencies just scream out at me. You can't. It's not something that I can just completely ignore at all. It's there. I just choose not to talk about it. So I'm still having a stronger preference for my introverted thinking. I just choose not to talk about it, as it would not net me anything positive. I'm too old. Not as argumentative as I used to be. I just tell people, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Okay, bye. Then move on. Oh, mission's over. What time is that? Oh, goodness. Well, that is the designated time for the stream to be over. Remember, if you have any further questions to ask me, or you didn't get around to it, or you're watching the stream late, you can always just @ me on my Discord, which I'm sure you can find fairly easily. Remember to like and subscribe to this particular stream, and hopefully we will see you guys tomorrow for the Saturday stream. That one will be, I assume, a little bit longer than this one. No one's saying bye. All right, well, yeah, like I said, just @ me if you have any other questions about MBTI, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye. Say bye, Ven. And crickets.